All right, beautiful humans, welcome to Burnersphere. This is our final session of the day, and I am thrilled that you are here. Whether you're joining us from YouTube or Discord or off onto the playa or right here in Burnersphere and discovering this community for the first time, you are in the right place. We're very honored and thrilled to be having this conversation around sustainability efforts right here in Burnersphere. So you're in the right place and welcome home. A little pro tip, I've sent out a few friend requests, so make sure you accept the friend request because that makes it a lot easier for us to find each other. You can always open up your friend browser, look for somebody that you're friends with on the platform, and click go to and come directly to them. Also about the audio, it's a good idea to turn the voice audio all the way on. All you're going to do is open up your settings, which is in the upper right corner of your desktop or the purple bead on your bracelet. And you're going to click on audio and then turn the chat volume all the way up so that you can hear us and the speakers uh, very clearly. We are streaming on YouTube, so hello to everybody on YouTube. Thank you, Doug, for making sure that everyone can participate no matter what technology that they have. And I want to say thank you to Christy Fennison for making this amazing world. She was actually with us this afternoon, so I hope she hops back in for this session and gets to see us all here. So for this final session of the day, I have something special. Black Rock City is one of the largest temporary cities on Earth. For 1 week a year, tens of thousands of people show up in the middle of the Nevada desert with no city infrastructure. There's no grid power. And for years, a group called the Alternative Energy Zone has been figuring out how to power it without a single fossil fuel generator. And the people who built these systems are right here with us in this world right now, and we're going to introduce them to you now. So our first panelist is a 22-year burner who has spent all of those years in the alternative energy zone. He is the designer and builder of the KAEZ solar powered radio station in Black Rock City. I didn't even know that existed. That is so cool. And the camp lead for Sun Tracker Camp. He spent 30 years as a broadcast engineer and CTO for the Southern California Public Media Station before retiring in 2025. He also get he also gifts a margarita bar and on playa life coaching, which tells you everything you need to know. So please welcome Bruce Regal, known on the playa as Jed. Welcome, Bruce. Next, we have um, has been building Andrew Stiles, who has been building solar systems for over 10 years. He provides tech support, repair, and hands-on workshops at Burning Man and Saguaro Man. He is the person you want when something stops working in the desert. Very valuable person to have. So welcome, Andrew. And lastly, our final panelist has been helping build Black Rock City since 2007, the Green Man year. He's a professional electrical engineer and director of engineering at Green River Engineering and director of technology at Summit Energy, where he builds commercial and utility scale solar and battery storage projects across California. He also gives welding services to AEZ and Black Rock City projects because that's just who he is. So welcome, Matt, also known as Mateo. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Athena. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to start out just by talking about what the AEZ or Alternative Energy Zone is. As Athena mentioned, we've been on Playa since really maybe the year 2000. Some of the folks were there in 1999, but I don't think it was actually dubbed the AEZ at that time. We have our own set of principles, and the biggest one is that we're no fossil fuel generators in our village. And of course, now there are no villages, there are only camps. Um, we've grown over the years. Right now, I think this year we've got about 300 or so campers in our theme camp, and maybe about 30 different individual camps. We're all individual, so we don't have any kind of dues. There's no common kitchens or anything like that. Everybody provides everything they need. So the radical self-reliance bit is very important. But we also don't charge any fees or anything. So all you have to do if you want to camp in the AEZ is just tell us you want to be there, give us the size requirements you have, and we'll provide you a lot in our village or camp. And then we have interior roads so that you can come by anytime during the entire week and be able to get to your camp and set up. Um, we have a town hall where our mayor is set up. And in that town hall is a number of common resources. So, for example, we set up Wi-Fi for folks that want to come by. It's one of the gifts that we give. We also have about a 40-foot tower that has a gigantic sign, LED sign at the top, which is sort of like a homing beacon for people. It's also the place about 20 feet up in that tower is where we have the radio station, KAEZ. And we're on the air 24/7 throughout the entire burn. And so some of the things that we do in the AEZ, especially to try to, push this mission forward, is every day at 11:15 or 11 o'clock, depending, because it's playa time. We have what we call our solar tours. We'll usually get between 15 or 20, 25 people maybe, and we take them through the camps and show them all the different power systems. Because we've got folks show up in a tent and put out a few solar panels all the way up to much larger RVs and camps like our mayor's camp, where they've got multiple solar arrays and multiple sets of batteries to power all kinds of things. What we'll have for you today are examples of the different power systems that Matt and Andrew and I have, which are really 3 different levels of what you can do to power whatever it is that you need or want to do at Burning Man. So we can go to the 3rd slide, Doug. The question there is, why use solar for your art or for your camp? So one of the real benefits of being in the AEZ is it's quiet. We don't have any generators going off all over the place. There's nobody's RV running a generator. And believe it or not, I mean, that is quite relaxing. It makes a pretty big difference. You don't have to worry about getting fuel. You don't have to worry about maintenance of generators. You become more energy conscious because now you've got a certain amount in your batteries. You've got a certain amount of recharging with your solar. So you start to think more in terms of being more energy efficient just as an individual living. And you can take that same concept and think about it for your own homes when you go back to the default world. So how much energy are you using and so on. Some of you may or may not have solar on your houses already. Some of the things that have made it a lot easier to do this over the years is that solar panels have gotten cheaper and more efficient. Battery chemistries have gotten safer. So I've been using what are called AGM batteries, and they're sort of the older technology, what we call lead acid, but they're sealed. You can knock them over. There's no acids going to leak out of them. So it's a pretty safe technology. And now they have lithium batteries that aren't going to burst into flames and burn down your house anymore. There's lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are a lot lighter in weight for the amount of energy that they can hold. And again, they're much safer to use. So those are really big features that make it a lot more practical now to use solar for your camp. And now there's also what a lot of people are calling all-in-one systems. Jackery, for example, is one company maybe that some of you have heard of. Basically, they're little boxes. They've got an input for a solar panel. They got a battery built in. They got 110-volt outlets right on the front. They've got USB outlets right on the front. And it's basically everything you need in one box. And all you have to do is hook up a solar panel to it. And depending on your needs, you can use that to power your entire camp. We've got some folks that show up in, maybe 1 or 2 tents. They've got one of these things, and they're able to charge their phones, charge their laptops and tablets. You can even run a coffee maker if you don't, let it brew for too long. And then just have the solar recharge the batteries during the day. So it's there's really a lot that you can do with not having to invest a whole lot of money. If we can go to slide number 4. Um, these are some of the things that we do in the AEZ, depending on the size of the system. So you can see that chest freezers, blenders, coffee makers, even sometimes heaters, depending on how big your system is. In my camp, in Sun Tracker camp, we have 2 chest freezers and an electric refrigerator that we run full time at our camp. And I just replaced the air conditioner in my RV with a 12-volt version that I'll be able to run air conditioning in my trailer at Burning Man all day without having to worry about discharging my batteries and so on. So the technology has really, really changed. Also, you can run a Starlink if you want to have your own internet connectivity. We all know you got to light yourself up. LED lights around your camp, or just ordinary lighting around your camp. If you have an e-bike, you could charge the battery for your e-bike during the day if you have the right amount of solar. So there's quite a bit that you can do, if you need to. We could go to the slide number 5. I'm going to turn this over to Andrew, and he's going to talk about his system, because he's got a lot of the things that I was just talking about. And this is one of the more affordable types of systems. So if you're not traveling in a motorhome or a travel trailer, if you're going to set up a tent or whatever, this is a really useful system for that size. So why don't you go ahead and take it, Andrew?
Thank you, Jed. Andrew here. So the key is to think about this. There's 4 main components of the solar systems. You have the solar panel, which is usually easy to see. Then you have a charge controller that takes the energy from the solar panel and puts it into a battery. You have your battery, and that's where we talked about AGMs versus Life PO4. And then you have an inverter if you need to get to 120 volts. So you really figure out with those 4 systems what capabilities you need, and then that's how we kind of design the system around it. So thinking about what do I want to power drives, and for how long drives the system you make. So about 4 to 5 years ago, all-in-ones with Life PO4 battery improvements started coming out. Before that, I would say the most of us said you have to build your own system. And the all-in-ones continue to get more capable every day, and every year you see improvements, where for smaller systems, the cost effectiveness of building your own isn't there because the commercialization and performance of these all-in-ones. So this is an example of an all-in-one system. It consists of the solar panel, and then the charge controller, battery inverter. Same thing with USB-Cs and different connectors is in that square thing in the front. So this is an EcoFlow. That's its brand name. The specific unit's a Delta 2 Max. Behind it is a solar panel that's at 400 watts. The battery in the all-in-one is 2,048 watt hours. It has a 2,400 watt inverter on it, which will power most house loads that you're plugging in. It would run a full-size fridge. It has 12 volt and USB-C and USB charging. The cost is $1,150 for that's totally what you're looking at. The nice thing of what we've figured out with these all-in-ones is they really make the money not on the unit, but selling you a solar panel or an additional battery. And now we've learned that you can just get the XT60 connector that's commonplace with these panels. So you can get an Amazon panel for, if EcoFlow would sell you a panel, it'd be north of $500. This panel's off of Amazon, it's $250. And we've actually learned now you can hook up other not proprietary EcoFlow batteries to it with an XT120 connector. So it gives you the ability to expand the unit, and basically this is a very capable unit. So in the all-in-ones, you can get smaller size and probably spend $500. It really just depends. But this at 2,400 watts, that the AC inverter and 2,000 watt hours, it's gonna run a full size fridge and a TV and all that stuff. So we really started recommending this to people as great way into it. If I rebuilt my system for what I'm using today, I would have gone with an all-in-one, just as the technology has changed on that. If there's any kind of questions, just kind of shout out if you want to stop about this. But this is just shows that how much it's changed. And then Doug will go to the slide 6. So this is my truck-based system. For 8 years, I've been going out to Burning Man. I started with 200 watts, and I've basically doubled in size because I wanted to power more stuff as it goes around. So this is a truck-based system. I call it because it's in the back of a pickup truck, which is a lightweight. You can see in this picture when it comes up there. So it's a 1,500 truck with a 5.5-foot bed, and it fits all my stuff in there. So the other thing we'll talk about is base voltage when you build your own. So watts equals volts times amps. So as you increase voltage, then your wires get smaller and the amperage gets smaller. So that's why your house has 120 volts and 220. And you're seeing solar systems go from 12 volts to 24 volts to 46 to 96 volts there as they go up. And you get a lot more power into smaller systems. So I went with a base voltage at 24 volts. My solar panel configuration is modular. There's 200 on the truck, and I can run up to 1,600 with 400 watt foldable panels. And I just basically put them out on the ground there. The battery storage, I have 4,800 watt hours. The AC inverter is 2,800 watts. And then I do some tricks to power 12 volt accessories. The cost is a lot more. You saw from the all-in-ones about $1,000. I have about $4,000 invested in this if I would rebuild it today. What it powers is I'm running a window unit AC and a heater into a shift pod tent. It will run all through the day. Mud burn, it didn't matter that I had to stay extra days because I don't run out of gas, so that's a huge ability. And Burning Man's designed to maximize solar. It's in the perfect time of the year, and then it's cooler at night, so I'm really only needing to run AC during the day. I have a fridge freezer, I have a water tank, all that stuff being powered about that. So this kind of shows you don't have an RV to run a large system. You can just kind of put it out on the ground and use it there. It's, I use it camping, and then it could basically provide backup power as well to use in my house there. So those are the two systems. It shows the modularity of an all-in-one versus custom, and it kind of shows the cost difference of different systems as you go up in capability there. Over. So Bruce, I'll turn it back over to you, and Doug, if we could go to slide 7.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly when it's going to show up on the screen, but when it does, you're going to see what we're using today in the Sun Tracker camp. I call it my second generation because my first generation was on a trailer that fell apart. So I had to buy a new trailer, and that meant a new power system. So we've had this one since 2017. It's a 12-volt system. So, as Andrew was saying, we have to have larger wires because of that. I've got 5 solar panels on top of the trailer, and I use the exact same mounting brackets that someone would use on their house. So I tried to get a much more sophisticated system for this newer version. And even though they're raised up about 4 or 5 inches off of the top of the trailer, I've never had a problem driving at 60, 70 miles an hour with having the panels blow off the roof. So it's been very, very stable. That's 1,650 watts of solar. And in terms of the battery storage, which I'll show you in a moment here, we've got 12,800 watt hours of storage. And I just went from the AGM lead acid technology over to the lithium iron phosphate technology. So what I could tell you was I went from having, in terms of, and I'm going to speak now in terms of amp hours. When you buy a battery, it literally says on the battery it's got 55 amp hours, right? And at whatever voltage it is, and that tells you how many amps you can draw for a certain period of time. So if you're drawing 1 amp and it says it's 55 amp hours, theoretically you could draw 1 amp for 55 hours. But because of the battery technology, you destroy the battery if you actually did that. You really only get about half of the capacity that's rated on the battery. With the lithium iron phosphate batteries, you get almost all of it. So the technology is significantly better, and that's why they're using these lithium iron batteries in electric cars, because you can actually drain them almost all the way down to where they're empty, and you won't damage them. But the best part about it was I took about 280 pounds out of my trailer by replacing the lithium with the AGM with the lithiums, and I more than tripled my energy capacity by doing that. So it's a pretty big deal going to this newer technology.
Nice.
I now can power an air conditioner, and as I mentioned before, I would have to say that we're in that category of glamorous camping now. I mean, it's been 22 burns. We did our time, with, sort of roughing it and mountain house, boiling a bag, food and everything else. So now what I do with my campmate Don here is we go to our favorite restaurants. We get our favorite meals. We separate them into individual servings and we freeze them. And so we're eating restaurant food every day, and that's why we need a chest freezer.
Memo.
And you know what? I'm telling you, it doesn't suck. But that's why we got to have the chest freezer, and we also bring lots of other stuff, coolers, which we did for many years. Any of you that have been to the burn and been using coolers, by the end of the burn, everything's defrosted and everything's floating in water. So having a chest freezer makes a big difference. And the chest freezers that are out there are really pretty energy efficient. So you don't need that much in terms of a power system in order to at least have one, maybe 3.8 cubic foot chest freezer. And so I also use this trailer. I've got a separate connector on the side of it so that when I'm home and the trailer is set up next to the house, I have a cable that goes from the trailer to the house. So if we have a public safety power shutoff like we typically do in Southern California, I can actually run the house from the trailer. And that was a big deal for me in terms of having a backup system. So I didn't have to get extension cords, hook up my Honda generator, run them through windows and run extension cords all over the house just to keep the refrigerators going and so on. All right, Doug, if we could go to slide 8. So when it comes up, you'll see we basically built a box in the back of the trailer. So my trailer is what they call a toy hauler. So they're designed to have either motorcycles or quads or whatever in the back. It's got a big door that folds down. So I bought that style of trailer because I knew it was designed to hold heavy weight. And then I built my power system with all the batteries and all the electronics in the back. So I've got all that technology instead of 3 motorcycles, right? And so it's set up in such a way that it's easier to tow and it's safer, and it was just a better type of trailer to use for a big power system like I have. So hopefully the screen is rezzed in for everybody. Over on the right, you can see the inverter. So that is what creates the 120 volts, and it powers all the outlets inside my trailer. In the center there, those are the solar charge controllers. So the solar panels get hooked up to those things, and then they charge the batteries and make sure that they charge them in the right way. So they do a bulk charge to begin with, and then they do an absorption charge, and then after that, they have what's called a float, which is now they know the batteries are fully charged. They're not going to hit them with a tremendous amount of current. They're just going to let it, just maintain them at a full charge. So that you really do need a charge controller to go with your solar panels. But as Andrew was saying, the all-in-ones, if you buy one of those, it's all built in. You don't have to think about any of this. This is basically like a deconstructed all-in-one. And then across the back, you see my lithium iron phosphate batteries. So I have 8 of those, and it's either 12,800 watt hours or 1,000 amp hours of capacity. So that is pretty much what I need. If I want to run my air conditioner all day at Burning Man, I could do that. Between the solar and the batteries, I've got it covered, and then I can run the air conditioner all night on those systems. You might also notice on the left there's a little subwoofer down there, so you've got to have something more than just power. You have to have something to use it with. All right, can we go to slide 9? And I'll wait a second here. So what slide 9 is going to show you is one of the ways that you can monitor your systems. So maybe you want to know your state of charge, like are the batteries full, are they half full, are they almost dead? How much energy am I getting from my solar panel? Is it charging enough? It helps to have some kind of metering or a dashboard in order to know what your system's doing, so that you can intervene if it turns out that there's a problem. We had a camper in our camp last year. She didn't realize it, but one of the wires had come off the charge controller in her camper, and even though she was in the sun all day long, she never charged her battery because this wire had come loose. She didn't have any kind of monitoring, so she didn't know that she wasn't charging her battery. So this is why this kind of thing is handy. So I'm going to assume that it's all back up there. On the right-hand side, that's an app that is provided by the battery manufacturer, and there's 2 screens. The screen on the left is sort of a general screen for an individual battery, and you can see it shows the battery voltage, the charging current, how much power. It tells you the temperature inside the battery, and the circuitry that manages the charging, what they call a BMS, which is battery management system. And then on the right-hand side, it's like more detailed. So you can see that it tells you the state of charge, and right now it's saying it's 100%, but don't believe it because it wasn't calibrated when I took this picture. But it shows you all those other details, but it also breaks it down. In the bottom there, you can see that there's 4 individual cells inside each one of those batteries, and it tells you the voltage of each one. So you can see whether or not you've got a problem. Like maybe one of the cells is 200 millivolts lower than the others. It tells you that maybe you've got a problem starting in that battery, and you can intervene and do something about it, either replace it or whatever. On the left-hand side, that's what came with the original system that I had, the Outback Power System. And you can see the top there, that bar is actually saying that I've got about 500 watts coming out of my solar panel at that moment. It's showing the battery voltage at 13 volts, and it's also showing that the inverter is on, that I'm not plugged into shore power. So it's a whole bunch of monitoring. All I can do is just walk up to it. I can see everything that's happening at once, and I know, okay, I can go back outside and have a margarita, right? So that this monitoring, you will get in an all-in-one. There will be a screen on the front of them that will tell you a lot of this information, so you can just walk up to it and see that everything is cool, and know that you don't have to intervene in any way. So I'm going to go over and turn this over to Matt and Matteo, and he's going to talk about his system and how it evolved, and then we'll pick it up from there. Matteo?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Jed, I should say. And then, Doug, can we go to the PDF page 12, please? Yeah, so hey, everybody. Thanks for joining our conversation here. Glad to have you join, and really, really excited to share what we've been working on. I like Andrew, went out to Burning Man, and I think Bruce kind of started with humble beginnings of a tent, and realizing that like the environment sort of drove certain, it demands certain conditions. And where I'm at these days is, after evolving from that, let's see here, it'd be slide number 12 once you get there, Doug. While Doug's doing that, so a lot of Burning Man is experimentation, and a place like that, what I would say here is the AEZ is a great place as a living laboratory just to see so many like-minded folks doing this. If you ever get a chance, please come out and check out our tour, because there's so many amazing things that people have and solutions that they've brought to the table to be comfortable out in the environment that the playa is. So what you're looking at here is the system I've been running for a while. I am in an RV. I found that was the best space for me to have a conditioned space, to be comfortable out there. And believe it or not, it's one of the like easier things to set up. The way I approached this problem was first using a mantra that I learned in energy efficiency, which is reduce before you produce. So what I looked at was like, how do I reduce the energy I'm going to need out there on the playa before I start getting solar panels and all that? And with an RV, one of the biggest things is, cooling. It's nice to have air conditioning on the RV, but I realized the stock RV air conditioning units are designed to plug into RV parks with a grid. And so they're not optimized for being efficient. They're optimized for cost, right? So I had to like tackle that problem on a budget. And then I also realized like I'm in a box sitting in a desert in the sun. So that's a problem, right? Because I'm sitting here kind of wanting to be cool inside of my box, right? So what I wanted to look at were what kind of passive cooling techniques could I use to be able to, and this is applicable for tents or wherever you're in, to sort of like mitigate against the sun on one hand while harvesting the sun on the other. And so this is the iteration I've come up with. Up in the right hand corner there, you can see I'm in basically a 17-foot similar toy hauler. You could do this with any kind of RV. And I integrated a shade structure. This is the third iteration of this shade structure you're looking at, and I have a fourth one I'm working on. But it's basically just like put it in shade, put an air gap, and the radiative heat transfer component from the sun gets transformed into basically, and then can be shed off into the air gap. That's essentially what's going on here, and it works such that then I could not have to use the RV air conditioner, and what I would use are these little basically window AC units, which are optimized for energy efficiency. These can have a higher SEER rating on them. They're more efficient. And so what I ended up doing was taking the emergency exit window, which all RVs have by default, and basically just cutting in a wooden insert for that to be able to now have my load be as most efficient as possible, and thus reducing my load footprint. So that was the strategies I used first, and it's been fruitful. The shade structure, I had to play around with different shade cloths. There's different like effectiveness of different shade stuff that you use in dealing with rain and everything. But once I got that dialed in and had a frame integrated into the RV, which was a little bit more challenging, but it wasn't a heavy lift. If you're good with basic tools, it wasn't a huge lift. I was able to employ those passive means. And then after several years of building systems like what Bruce showed and what Andrew was talking about earlier, of like the custom built systems, I too realized that there were products on the market now that were had the reliability and had the capabilities to be able to be a prepackaged deal. And I wanted something that was simple, that I could literally plug my new efficient RV directly into. Didn't have to do anything else. And so that's what you see down here on the lower left, is this integrated system with an augmented battery to 51 volt Blue Eddy system. And it's using about 4 kilowatt hours with the expansion battery. And it has about 2,400 watts to be able to handle the loads. With this design here, I don't think I ever go over about 1,800 watts is my max like load when it does happen. That's like having the AC running, and I do have a microwave in this thing that I'll use on occasion. But those are like the max loads. Then for actual generation, the power generation, once I got the energy efficiency dialed in, this was an experimentation that I've done for a couple of years just because, why not, right? So I built a you can see these 3 solar panels that are in front of the RV. That's actually sitting on what amounts to, like, think of it as like a little elevated Lazy Susan that's automated. That's an azimuth tracker that has 2 motors that will drive the array to be facing the sun in a an azimuth direction. So it's just like a Lazy Susan that moves to follow the sun and align the solar panels up. The one that I'm bringing out this year, I've opted to integrate the solar panels are kind of like mounted now how Bruce had them on his RV. Again, to simplify setup, like for me, I'm like trying to do the least amount of stuff on the playa so I can get myself situated and then go help other people. So I try to minimize the amount of setup I have to do. But really that's the system that I've been using. And I think the mantra that I really want to hit home is like reduce before you produce. Know what your loads are. You can look them up. You can measure them too. There's devices you can use. They have these little meters you can plug your load right into and then plug into the wall socket, and they'll tell you how much load something is that you want to use. But I like this all-in-one system. I think it's good because what I can do too is when I park the RV, I can remove that equipment from it. So if I'm parking in an RV and maybe not the most secure location, I can pull that out. I've had emergencies, kind of like what Bruce was saying, like power system shutoffs here. We have those a lot in California. And it was nice to be able to plug my fridge into this thing when it was charged up. I keep them like topped off at my house. It's nice to be able to have that emergency backup power should something like that occur. But again, like I'm saying, most of my loads I've got the window AC unit, 12-volt RV loads are like they'll plug the RV directly in to this unit. Like I said, I got my e-bike, camp lights, and then this year I'm putting a DC refrigerator into my unit as opposed to just being propane and the absorption types of refrigerators. So you can do it. And if you want to see more of this, I'll also be, as we'll show later, doing a class twice during the burn week on just specifically RV off-grid stuff. And I'll be touring not only mine, but a bunch of other great systems that are on the playa. We have folks like our mayor has integrated a swamp cooler system into his RV. There's just a lot of different ways that you can really approach the RV problem, which I don't know if you've all seen the latest burner carbon emissions report. It just came out like last week or the week before that. And one of the biggest emissions we have at the event that was identified was looking at still generators and cooking fuels. So generators are often used to power RVs, and so that's why that's been my focus, is to really tackle this problem. So anyways, love to talk more about it. Come on playa, if you have more questions at the end of this, I'd be happy to answer them. And I'll turn it back over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Matt.
We can move on to slide. Yep.
Yeah, let's go to slide 12. So we're going to go back in time, and I want to show you the first system that we built. And there's a couple of reasons that I wanted to show this. First of all, it was a lot less expensive. It used a fair amount of secondhand equipment. One of the things about solar panels that a lot of people may not realize, does it say sun tracker
Slide
can't
10.
generate?
Yeah, go to slide 10.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm out of order.
Oh, no, you're right. It should be slide 12. Sorry. Yeah. So go down.
Yeah, so it'll say sun tracker
up
plant
one,
first generation
up one
power
from
system.
there.
That's
So
11.
it's showing slide 11 on your thing there. So the PDF, I guess, called it page 11. So go up, yeah, one, Doug.
You want 11. There you go. 11.
Yep.
11. Oh.
Yep. No worries.
Oh, okay.
Everything was going so well.
These are my what it's showing right now for the group is these are two of my original systems. So the bottom picture is the second year and the top picture is the third year. So that's my advice, I guess, would build for the future. If you build a system that maxes its limits, then you end up spending a lot of money while you rebuild it. So those are things to kind of think about. And then I think what we're saying, but I'll just put it out there is, hey, now that you can power and then, you're having what are called power coolers and stuff like that, or just fridge freezers, that, I don't have to go to Arcadia and get ice every other day. And that's like a huge time saving at the burn. So that's another. Running AC is cool, but you're just talking, hey, having a powered cooler that you don't have to refill with ice is a huge game changer on this. Over back to you, Jed. Your slide's up.
Excellent. Okay, so one of the reasons why I wanted to show my old system was because, as I was mentioning, solar panels, they're a lot more reliable than most people know. Even the new ones have warranties. They're like 25 or 30 years. If you look at the solar panels on that on the right-hand side there, every single solar panel on that trailer was used. As a matter of fact, the 4 that you see in the foreground there came from a system that was originally put up in 1980. And they were still putting out almost 100% of their rated capacity in 2003 through 2017. So as long as they're not shattered or broken or don't have, the wires cut off of them or whatever, you can buy a lot of used solar panels for very, very, very cheap, and they will be reliable. So that's an important point. If you look to the left of that where it says wind generator, we experimented with wind. I was able to buy, that's a model AirX. It's made by Southwest Wind Power. It's an Arizona company. That's a 400-watt wind generator. And you know what? It hooks right up to your battery. And you can charge a 12-volt battery directly off of it. But at Black Rock City, you have to get that wind generator a minimum of 30 feet in the air in order for it to work. And we didn't know that. At first, I went out there and what do we have? Like a 18-foot pole that we put it on. It just sat there. Every now and then the blades would move a little bit, and it was almost worthless. And so we kept going up 8 feet at a time because that's the size of the pipes that I could buy from Home Depot. And it wasn't until I got over 30 feet that I was actually making any power. It took 5 people to put up the tower for the wind generator. And it had 4 separate guy wires that had to hold it to the ground. And that zone around it, that 30-foot zone, is what we call the kill zone. Because if the thing were to fall over, those blades are going several hundred miles an hour. They'd slice right through someone. It turned out that I was able to replace that wind generator with a single solar panel that actually put out more energy throughout the day. So we stopped bringing it. So even though wind generators they're fun to watch and they're real interesting and you think you're making energy, in a lot of ways, they're more trouble than they're worth. And that's just one man's opinion. Maybe there are some other people that have had better luck with them, but we really found that the amount of time, the 4 hours that it took us to set up and tear it down just didn't make a lot of sense for us. If you look in the upper right, you'll notice that was the extent of my. I'm sorry.
We all think about going wind at some time and then realize that it's just not worth it. So it's very complex, and then you can't predict it. So we're solar, we know what we're going to get each day. So that's another key aspect of generating your own power, is the predictability nature.
Absolutely, that's really it. If you look in the upper right, you'll see that was the extent of my metering. It was one little display and that little gadget there that I got from Radio Shack that tells you whether or not you've got AC power. But even that was enough to let me know that things were working. And then the bottom pictures there are a battery that we used. And then it was just a giant metal box that I got at a surplus place. And the blue thing in the middle is the inverter. And then the rest of it is fuses and wires and a little charge controller. So this was my original system, and I put it together for like $900. But we were able to, power lots of things with this in my first trailer, and we had it for many years. And just going back to that solar panel picture up in the front, you'll notice not the first panel, but the second one just above it. That panel actually is shattered glass. That was damaged and it broke like a windshield. It was still putting out 75% of its rated power, even though the glass was shattered. So these things are pretty tough typically. So I wanted to make sure that everybody saw that, you don't have to necessarily spend a fortune and buy brand new. you can do these things, largely with, stuff that's already secondhand materials. So if we go to the last slide, Doug, we've got some information about how you can reach out to us. Our website for the Alternative Energy Zone and our Facebook groups. And it talks about in 2026, coming up here in just a few more weeks. Oh my God. We've got our tours at 11 a.m. during Burn Week. And we're going to have the off-grid RV workshop that Matt was talking about. And I would say come by the village anyway. I think we have 5 bars in our village. And we're going to be doing quesadillas and pancakes and all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, my camp has a margarita bar at about 4:30ish every day during Burn Week. And so I would invite everybody to come on by and check us out. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have.
Speak up, Admiral.
Yeah, so the physical panels themselves, just maintaining them. I saw you had yours on the ground, and just like covering them if they get covered with dust or moving them off or wind and so those things. What kind of things do you recommend to make sure you're? Because I had a friend, we had a cross country trip. He forgot to tie his panel down, and it flew off as we were going down the highway. So that sort of thing of just the panels seem like the largest area of it, and what are some of the considerations with keeping them optimized and safe?
You really don't need to do, and I leave mine, and I try not to have people walk on them, but people walk all over them. I had a child play tic-tac-toe on them. They have to be really dirty, and not saying you can get there. So we've been having whiteouts and you have a layer, you would need a significant layer to dust them off. I just bring a broom and sweep them off. I'm just attentive like that with them, but there's been times where you're like, it didn't make a difference. Like you would have to have if you can still see the black, they are having plenty of it. They're not as damaged by the dust on them as you would think. I would say probably every 2-3 days, and Jed and Mateo can talk about if they're on top of the RVs, like you could get up there and look, but usually if you're getting that buildup, you can just sweep it off with a broom. So I had I used to, before I brought the folders, I had full panels that I got from basically any installer. They're going to have spare panels that'll sell you cheap. So I got them for, super cheap, these, a 370 watt panel. And then we try fancy things like rain exit to see if it makes a difference and if it sleeks off. But they're really like, if you brush them off with a broom, if they got dust on them, it helps them, but you can almost do nothing and you would still see the same amount of power over.
Yeah, Andrew's right about that. There is one circumstance where I had the most trouble with dirt or playa on top of the panels, and that was when we had and this was last year actually, where it was blowing dust and then rain, and then blowing dust and then rain. So you end up with mud on the panels, and it can, if you get 2 or 3 days of that, it can really start to accumulate. So I had to get up on top of the trailer and actually clean them. But under normal circumstances, as Andrew was describing, there's some years I never even went up there and noticed very little difference in output.
Yeah, I
Do they fold up too?
Losses from soil are sort of like, or soiling as we'd call it, 1 to 2%. It's usually when you get them caked on through that like moisture and deposit that things can be at a loss. One thing I would say is like, solar panels, even though they're flexible ones, they're a little bit more resilient, but they will crack, and you want to make sure you're handling them carefully and mounting them as best you can. What I've noticed too is from just working in the industry is like, as you move solar panels more, certain ones, like if you are going to buy them in the used market or the aftermarket, which I do too. I mean, they're like Andrew's saying, like there's a lot of installers that will have extras, and that's a great place to be able to get a couple of panels. You got to be careful that as you move them around on and off the playa, that they can, as they flex, they can start to get little micro cracks in them, and that can lead to other problems down the line, and to the extreme that Bruce was showing us, where they can actually fully crack on the front. But they're pretty tough, and I've taken crack modules out there before too that were free, and they were running at about 70%. So they'll still produce. It's just if you want them to last as long as you can. I clean mine when there's a major dust storm, and it helps. But really, it's just the transport to keep them safe.
What about the caustic nature of the playa? Like, I know that in the past, electronics that I've taken out to Burning Man, the playa dust just eats through the wire, the rubber on the outside of the wire, connectors
Right.
corrode, things rust, and you're dealing with a lot of electronics. So how do you mitigate that?
Yeah,
So,
Well,
so mine is
Go ahead, Andrew.
mine is in the back of the truck. So you're trying to like where theirs is all inside the RV where they're limiting dust. So they benefit from that. The outside connectors are called MC4s, and they're all waterproof connections. So you don't have we're not seeing problems there. And then for me, because I kind of have gaps in my truck bed, I'm just trying to limit the dust that goes into the truck bed, but I've not had any, problems. I've opened up one of my inverters that I've had for years, and it had a little dust in it, but nothing significant. So you just kind of want to put it in a space that is protected, but it has to also have enough space because they do, in the back, it's 100 degrees out and this thing's producing power. They do warm up. So airflow is key, and the space enough where it can do that. It's just a good management technique. Over.
Yeah. So, and I think that, and this, frankly, this applies to all burners. We get dust on everything, right? The folks who live in humid climates, the folks that live near the coast, are going to have a lot more trouble with everything, because the playa dust that manages to come home with them then has the moisture to mix with, and then you've got this super alkaline kind of corrosion happening. Well, I live out in a desert pretty much, and I've after 22 burns here, I've had no problems with any electronics, but it's because it's always dry as hell out here. So it kind of depends on your environment and the exposure and how much humidity and moisture mixes in with the playa dust that you bring back. So far so good on my end, but I know definitely other folks have had lots of problems, even with their vehicles. There've been problems with it where they've had rust on the chassis and so on and things. So I'll give you one example of something that is really probably the best example. On the KAEZ radio station, the transmitter has a fan in the back, and it's literally sucking playa dust inside the transmitter with the fan. And every year when I get home, I have to take it apart and get the air compressor and blow it all out. But it's never damaged it. And again, it's because it's always been in a dry environment.
Yeah, that's a good point about like where you live and where you're going to be after the event. One of the benefits of buying the prepackaged systems is often as they're assembled, the higher quality ones will actually have additional coatings on the electronics, like conformal coating and other things that can help with their corrosion as a result of playa dust. When I first went out to Burning Man, we brought a photovoltaic system with us, and our buddy who'd been to many burns lent us an inverter. And good thing we tested it beforehand, because the inverter totally blew up before as we were doing our pre-test going out there. And when we opened it up, it was full of playa dust. So it's important to blow stuff out afterwards, and then also as just regular care for all the electronics as you get back is to blow them out. But picking pieces of equipment that have, if they do have a higher IP rating, is what they refer to it as, is they can have ingress of dust protection. If they don't, if they require fans, like what Bruce was saying, make sure that if you can get something that has better preparation for that. A lot of people are realizing with these systems, people are using them for camping and even Burning Man, and they're starting to design the plug and play systems to be able to handle that. So
And we're having
Yeah.
more power outages at our homes. So having a system that you know is tried and true on Playa will give you power at home when we do have these
right,
extreme weather situations, or we deal with fires in Southern California, literally everywhere now. I mean, Canada's on fire right now. So it's good to have these alternate power systems. You can't rely on the grid.
Yeah, Athena, you got a really good point, and I think both Matt and Andrew showed us that those all-in-one systems that they're both using, you can bring those in your house and power your refrigerator and your freezer, so you can keep your
Yeah.
food fresh. You may not be able to run the air conditioner in your house or whatever from it, but you can run some lights. You could probably keep your internet up, and if you've got solar panels, whatever, you can take it back outside, charge it up for a couple of hours. That's we were doing something similar to that or in the early days out here, because we had an all-in-one that was provided to us by San Diego Gas and Electric, because they knew that they were doing the public safety power shutoffs, and my wife has a CPAP machine, so anybody that has an electronic medical device, the power company was actually giving away these all-in-one systems so that they could power their medical devices, through the power shutoffs. So that's a really good point, because you don't have to just use them when you're camping.
right.
Do we have any other questions?
How far can you keep the panels from the controllers and so forth? Can you extend them if your camp layout is such that it's better to put the panels, 50 feet away, or does that make sense? Just
Yeah, I could take that one. It's really a function of how the panels are wired and their voltage, and what kind of acceptable voltage drop do you want for those conductors. For a long time I was running 12 volts. Now I'm up to 120 volts when I would wire them, and I would have the equipment be able to handle that. And that's direct current. You can go up to 600 volts safely if you had to with a larger array. But it's really a function of the voltage drop, and then it's which is usually 2% is what you want to aim for. But the longer you go to keep that 2%, the bigger the wire is. So it costs more to do that, essentially, to be able to do that. But ideally, you want them as close as you can. But that's a good thing. That's a good parameter to potentially consider, is how far away an array would be from the source.
Yeah, and I think
if you kind of look at me, I bring cords to be able to move, put them all wherever they fit. So I put, it goes into how you have to wire them. So for example, you'll hear I'm in a 2S, 2P, which means two of them are in series, and then the two groups of series are in parallel. So that grouping is considered. So it's not like you can just I can't spread all of them out, but the two have to go together and the other two have to go together. So when we did Sahoro Man, I started with two in front of my truck, two behind. Another person showed up and they all got four put up there. So it's pretty easy if you have the bigger panels, like Mateo was talking about, configured, that you can do a 50-foot run, not a problem.
Yeah, so my situation being that I'm just in the trailer and the trailer's on a 12-volt system, I built mine as a 12-volt system, which is sort of the worst case scenario for wire, right? The lower the voltage, the bigger and heavier the wire, and wire's not cheap. Copper is not cheap. So that's why when you see someone get solar on their roof, in an ordinary neighborhood, those systems are going to be higher voltage systems. They'll be 48 volt systems, because you get to use thinner wire, and thinner wire is cheaper. And so that's all built into the math, right? It's watts is volts times amps. So if you keep lowering the voltage and you want to make the same power, the amps have got to come up, and when they do that, the copper has got to come up. I was constrained because my entire system is at 12 volts, so I just look, I bit the bullet. I ran the big fat wires through the trailer, and it works. But it's better if you can go up higher. And when when you're buying an all-in-one system, those things are already configured to minimize things like the size of the wire and so on. So if you needed to put the panels further away, you can do that without as much consequence.
And have you guys solarized your homes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I can start just because I got this house 2 years ago, and it came with solar panels, but it turns out that there's different kinds of systems out there depending on how you bought them and what the deal you made with the solar company was. The people that originally put solar on this house did what was called a leaseback system. So they literally put no money down up front. And a company came out, they put 36 solar panels on the house, and then they charged the owners at that time a certain amount of money every month, and it lowered their utility bill. They were probably spending $400 or $500 a month on energy. But when they put the power system on, now all they were paying was like $150 a month. So they saved money. The way that the math works is that the energy the solar panels were producing was being sold back to the utility, and the utility is what they call net metering. The utility was then giving them credit for all the energy they were putting into the grid. So when the person that lived in this house before me decided he wanted to buy the system out from that company, he then started getting the electric bills, but the electric bills were always like minus $140, minus $210, because we were always selling energy back to the utility, and we were always having where they owed us money every month instead of we having to make a payment for utilities. The challenge, though, was the way the system was designed is when they turned the power off. Even though I had all these 36 solar panels on the house, I still lost all my lights. I still lost all my power because the way it was designed was just to feed back into the grid. But when the grid disappeared, the whole system shut off.
oh,
So
that
I
sucks.
had to replace. Yeah, it sucked. That's what I thought, especially first time the lights went out. And so what I had to do at great cost was to replace the inverters bolted to the side of the house. I got to keep the solar panels, and those new inverters sell energy to the utility like the old ones did, but they can accommodate batteries. And I put a little shed back there, and I put a bunch of batteries in it. So now when the power goes off, my batteries take over. And if it's during the day, the solar and the batteries take over, and I get to stay powered up. So there's lots of different ways that you can have solar in your home. It kind of depends. Do you want to pay a lot of money up front and buy a system, or do you want to do a lease back system? It really depends on, sort of your finances and what your bills are and what makes the most sense for you. So I converted from a lease back system to a owned system, and now I'm technically what you might consider off grid.
And those leaf back systems, or you say, that's probably inconsistent per state, right? As to company is whether a friend of mine, because I asked him about that, and he said the expensive part was the box that you had to put on that, monitored how much was going back into the grid. So there seems like there's different rules for that in different localities.
You're 100% right.
There is. So I live here in Arizona. My brother could add a battery really easy. I'm a different power company. We're 20 minutes away. He's TEP, I'm Trico, and how you can achieve whole home backup. And they're getting a lot better. I would say the US in the next 2 years is going to have systems that Europe already has it, where you basically take an all-in-one and you just plug it into a house outlet. That the US they're not motivated to do it because they want to sell you power and make it easy, but the technology is now catching up. The key is that when there's a power outage, that your house isn't electrifying their grid, and it's a safety concern. So that's why the safety rules exist the way it is. Well, there's technology now that can prevent that from happening, where with different collaring devices. So I think for the three of us on this call, we've seen this for years of how solar is improving. All the accessories, LED lights made solar a lot more, the air conditioners, the technology of making solar more feasible continues to increase every day. And then eventually the US legality wise will, the systems that they're running in Europe, they're calling them apartment things, where you put a solar panel on your balcony of your apartment, you plug it into the wall, software and a little hardware device makes it safe, and then you're generating your own power or a portion of your own power. Over.
Yeah, that's true. And, some of the other inconsistencies that you'll see are, and this can happen within the same power company, like my next door neighbor might have a different net metering deal than I do because my system was put in a few years before his. There's in California, we have what's called the CPUC, which is a California Public Utilities Commission. And they changed the rules over time so that the amount of money that the power company has to pay me for the energy that I'm generating is actually more than they're paying for my neighbor who just put the solar on there because I'm grandfathered in. Because and if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, suppose that all you people out there, you own a utility and you're selling people power, right? And then all these people start putting solar panels on the house. Now you're not making as much money, but you still have to pay to fix all the wires. You still have to maintain that entire infrastructure. You still have to have all the trucks and all the employees, but you got less money coming in because you got fewer people paying bills. So they are going to be out there talking to the politicians, talking to the commissions, saying, hey, you know what, we can't afford this. We can't pay them retail price for their power anymore. We have to pay them less. So there's this tug of war that kind of goes on between, a profit-making company that's providing energy for a community and, how much money are they going to make and then how much money can the consumer save when they put their own power systems on. And what Andrew was talking about is really, really important. And that is that you don't want to fry somebody who's out working on a pole because your house is generating electricity and he thinks he turned the power off. And he's about to put like a pair of pliers on a wire. So it's really important that we make sure that we're not backfeeding the grid during a power outage because somebody may be touching something.
Really
Yeah,
interesting
great discussion.
point. Yeah.
Any more comments on like Burning Man related stuff? I'm sure we could all go off and talk about like on grid stuff, but any more?
Well, and I
off-grid
think it's really
questions?
important to start with, like, what is your power load? Like, decrease your power load as much as possible, and it
Right.
makes your solar more efficient and more feasible.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
remember
and in
going out to
fact,
Burning Man and lighting shows with par cans. I couldn't imagine trying to use solar to power par cans.
No.
Yeah. But there's tools there's a lot of easy stuff folks could use. There's these little you can buy them on Amazon. In terms of like on the topic of understanding what your loads are, you can literally plug any load into these little devices that they used to be called a kilowatt, or they're little power monitors that you can buy. They're probably $20, and you can really see what each of the loads are actually drawing, both from their power consumption all the way down to other attributes like their power factors or other things, so that you could see like how would this tax an actual system when you're on the playa. And I use that quite a bit. Like I have a solar cooker thing I'm working on right now, and I was like, how much is this pan actually going to draw if I want to use it? So I plugged it in this device, and it was able to tell me what it was.
Yeah, I mean, literally, my wife wanted to have, she wanted to make toast in the trailer when we were camping. And so I took a toaster out and I plugged it in, and I plugged it into this kilowatt device that Mateo was talking about. And holy crap, does that thing use a lot of power?
Yeah.
So it only took, like, 2 minutes to make the toast, but, it really whacked the batteries for those 2 minutes. So it is important to understand what your loads are and reduce the loads as much as possible before you start building the power systems.
Any other questions?
I
Kopal, you had your
have a
hand up.
question. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I have one of these all-in-ones. I didn't realize I was this close to the state of the art. But it's kind of small. I have a Yeti 800 or 400, I think. And then if I accidentally leave like the black lights on at the beginning of the week, I've blown my power budget. It doesn't really fill in. So I need more panels. But is it reasonably easy to chain the panels? Like, can I just like plug in more, or do I need some controller that will like regulate it so that it charges fairly?
You have to stay within
The,
the limits of the equipment and
you got
really understand what you have. Like that's the first thing is like you have to look at the voltage requirements of the all-in-one units and the current requirements. And then from there you can look at what kind of array you can hook to them. But that's the first starting point is really looking at what is the max voltage that it will take. And then because every solar panel has an open circuit voltage and a short circuit current. And you want to make sure that like you are not overloading those units, and that's the way you would add more panels to your system. So you start with that. This is a great tool too that I think that is in the background of potential development that we might be helping out with. But how do you size for these all-in-one units to make sure? You can also check with the manufacturer. Sometimes they'll have certain calculators. I work with certain inverter manufacturers. They'll have calculators. The way we do it in the big utility scale stuff, we're also looking at temperature variations for a site because the array, as temperature goes up and down, that will change the voltage and current windows limits because their photovoltaic arrays respond to temperature differently. So there's that size. Usually on the playa, we're okay, but sticking with the open circuit voltage is one way to do it. And that's every solar panel has that, the open circuit voltage and short circuit currents.
Yeah, I
so,
think
so what you
and
need to look at is that they just go on. If you need to figure out if you have a Yeti 400 or Yeti 800, and then in the manual it will tell you what's the max voltage of the solar array you can hook to it and the max wattage, and that's the thing. So that is, I would say, one of the big differences of building like Bruce and I in the truck systems. Because we're not in an all-in-one, if I want to hook more and more panels to it, I can just add another charge controller. Where an all-in-one, it will be limited by the charge controller that's built into it. For example, my EcoFlow Delta 2 Max, it can do a maximum of 1,000 watts, and it's 500 watts per plug-in. So it becomes a little more that you have to manage when you get that unit. So you just got to look that up, and then it will tell you Yeti 400, 800, it could be limited potentially to like 200 watts. So you might be at the limit already. Over.
yeah, when in doubt, read the manual.
Yep.
And Greg, you had a question?
Yeah, hi there, everyone. I had a question about some of the state-of-the-art advances in solar energy generation with respect to single die, super efficient solar chips that use solar concentration lenses and heliocentric mechanisms to keep them focused. Are you familiar with this technology? Is it commercially available? What's the efficiency of some of this stuff where it's basically one cell that's got a big lens over it, and then it
Right.
moves around with the sun.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's
I've done some
specific name.
R&D work on those before on some
Yeah.
units, and usually like the tracking mechanisms to keep the beam focused is they're complicated, and while the chip itself is very efficient, keeping the energy on that chip to boost its efficiency up. I haven't seen it commercialized yet. Maybe Andrew or Bruce would see it, but complexity is the enemy of reliability is one of the other mantras I operate under. And so the more stuff that you have to move to gain the efficiency versus just like even what Bruce was saying earlier with his wind turbine generator, it was just better to get more solar panels rather than stick with that one technology. And especially with the cost decrease that we've benefited from first with photovoltaics and now with energy storage, that is sort of becoming the main solution. And like Andrew was saying earlier, I mean, we're in a super sunny environment, so it's sort of, and it's very predictable. So that's why it's just like, it's so much easier. Certainly open to it, but I haven't seen it certainly on the utility scale or commercial scale yet.
Yeah, and Matt brings up a really, really good point. Solar panels, put out the maximum amount of energy when they're perpendicular to the rays of the sun. That's why you'll see them tilted, right? Whenever they're on somebody's house or whatever. And then a lot of times you'll see people tilt them up when they're on the playa. Matt's got a system where he actually can track the position of the sun throughout the day. So he's actually getting more energy out of those solar panels than if they just were fixed or if they were laying flat on the ground. So, that's one of the ways you can get more out of it if you got them on a little rack or whatever, and it's, 11 a.m. and then you got them focused really well and sort of pointed at the sun. After lunch, it's like 2 p.m. You move them a little bit. You can maximize and get more energy out of them just by trying to track. So the kind of cell that you were talking about that's got lenses that focus on it, those are even more sensitive to whether or not they're perpendicular to the source, the sun. And that's why the tracking mechanisms have to be more precise. And the minute you get into tracking with motors and, gears and all the rest of that, spoken like an engineer, Matt,
Right.
the complexity is sort of the opposite direction of reliability.
Yeah, I
Thank
call
you.
that KISS. The acronym is KISS, keep it simple. I used to tilt my panels, and then I realized, hey, if I just have a slightly bigger array, throw $100 more down, I don't have to tilt. I can just lay them flat because we're in ideal conditions. So I think the vast majority of RV owners are now just flat mounting them and saying, hey, I bought an RV for convenience. Do I want to go up and tilt the panels? This would change if you're in the Washington or the northern states. In the winter, you have to tilt. But here in Burning Man, it's the sun is directly overhead. Tilting buys you very little, especially when you can the panels are so cheap and put another panel out there. Over.
Absolutely.
Is there any way to generate water out there just from the air, having some power from solar cells?
Well, so, that's a really good point.
There is.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So the problem is there is generators that will take the water out of the air. The problem is that it's extremely intensive, and Burning Man, why it maximizes our applications, it is low humidity. You need to run them at night, and the power requirement is significant at night. So it's like the worst thing you can do to generate the power. Could you do it? Absolutely. Is it feasible? No. Just bring your own water.
Yeah.
Yeah, or move to Alabama.
Yeah.
Right.
There's just not
If you're
enough
in
humidity
Florida, you
out
work
there.
like the champ. Yeah.
Or recycle your piss.
We have time for one more question. Does somebody have a question? One more?
What's the relative
No?
lifetime of lithium phosphate? Yeah, what was that? Lithium iron
Lithium
phosphate.
iron.
Iron phosphate.
Yeah,
Lithium
Yeah,
iron
so-
phosphate. What's the functional lifetime of the batteries?
well, I'll tell you what, we can all comment on that. If you don't mind, Andrew, I'll talk about it because
Yep.
I wrecked the batteries on my e-bike. So they didn't last anywhere near as long as they were supposed to last. Lithium iron phosphate batteries, or the LiPo 4 batteries, if you're going to store something for months at a time, they don't like to be stored fully charged. Okay? It's well known with that. And you will limit the amount of charge and discharge cycles that you'll get out of those if you charged them up full and just left them like that. So when my trailer's sitting at the side of the house and I'm not going to be using it for a while, I discharge the batteries to right around 50%, and I just let them rest at that point. And if they start to drop down a little bit, then I'll charge them back up and get them back into the 50, 60% range. They will last far longer than the older lead acid technology. It kind of depends on the manufacturer, but there are thousands of discharge cycles that they can last. But you got to treat them right.
What about nickel metal hydride?
That's an
Expensive
older
and-
technology.
Yeah. Nope. Everyone's running Life PO4 batteries because they're significant. weight savings, and you're just getting the high power draw. You can really work these things down. So it's the future. And the next generation, it's going to be what's called, I would say within about 2 years, you'll start seeing it as solid state batteries. That is forecasted to be the jump from AGM to Life PO4, where you have to wait, increase all the benefits of it. So really, I think within 2 to 3 years, you'll commercially see these start coming onto the market, and it just revolutions forward. If you read the studies on electric cars, we had an electric car hybrid for over 10 years. We saw near zero battery degradation, and that was being aggressive. There's things that you can do that damage them, but if you're kind to them the way and run them within the spec, they, in theory, will live, probably forever. They'll outlive us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good question.
I'm fully expecting to get at least 10 years out of the batteries that I just installed here at my house at a minimum.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an order of magnitude difference on the lifetime between AGM and iron phosphate batteries. What I'm seeing actually in industry deploying like megawatt hour systems, we're penciling deals of anywhere from 15 to 20 years of a life cycle for the batteries. And we're cycling those every day. But something like the new prepackaged deals, or even what Bruce was showing us in his systems, I mean, that's like can be easily a 10-year battery if you're taking good care of it. Like was said earlier, you want to make sure you're storing these down to like 40 to 60% state of charge. It take a little bit of maintenance on that end, but the technology is definitely improving since I've been involved.
Yeah, don't
Most
be
of these-
surprised in the next 2 years if you see electric cars with 600-mile range from
Right.
the new
Most
battery.
of
Well, there
these
we already
components
have that
sourced
in
in
some
China.
places for sure.
Yep.
These are all Chinese components, right? For most.
Yeah, when I was in China, those
95%
cars
of
had
this
like
stuff.
a 600-mile radius, a 600-mile range on those cars.
Right.
That was pretty impressive. Their taxi cabs and everything. Well, we have reached the hour and a half mark. So I would like to thank the three of you so much for coming and
Thank
giving us
you.
so much to
Yeah,
think
pleasure.
about. Wow, that was
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of information. I'm very excited about bringing AEZ into Burnersphere and having you guys have a world where this information is readily available when anybody wants, when they're in here. So thank you so much, Mateo, Jed, and Andrew and Snoop for coming in and sharing all of this with you. This is the end of
Yay.
our Sustainability Summit day. Well, we've walked through land stewardship that keeps Black Rock City's footprint clean. We stepped inside a raft built from from plastics, and sailed across the ocean 2,600 miles. We heard from engineers who have spent decades proving that clean energy is not a future vision. It's a system that works right now. And this is what Burnersphere is for. It's not to watch these stories, but it's to be inside of them and to connect with the people that are our storytellers. So thank you this morning to Mike, Katie, and Martine from the Earth Guardians, Dr. Marcus Erickson from the Five Gyres Project and Leap Lab. And thank you, Andrew, Jed, and Mateo from Alternative Energy Zone. And then a huge thank you to our campmates whose camp dues make gatherings like this possible and keep the experience open and accessible to everyone. If you've been enjoying Burnersphere today and want to help continue to sustain it, we invite you to join as a campmate and contribute camp dues. If you think about any event, they all happen in venues. It's a place where the content lives. For us, that's servers. And servers, much like your cloud drives, all take up space that we have to pay for. So please help contribute to those camp dues to cover the server space. So come take a
Yeah,
stroll in
and
the digital dust, and we will see you in Burnersphere in the future. Yes.
Yeah, let me throw out one more thing. The AEZ, we just got placed. We're at 3:30 in E. Come by around 4:30 for a margarita, and come by at 11 a.m. for a tour of the solar. Thank you, Athena.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yay!
And you're welcome to stay and look at the eco zone and hang out and ask your questions and have conversations.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sweet. See ya.
Athena, I just saw your smiling face on episode 2.